We're at a point right now where the issues and problems in the Idaho forest situation can no longer be ignored. The steep hill the prosecution is going to have to climb is coming closer and closer as this trial draws near. And within certain news outlets, more fair coverage is starting to take place. So what are the issues and the problems the prosecution has to plan for? Well, all that being said, everything's alleged. Welcome to The Point. Let's get to it.
Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
This article's from The Guardian, and in a lot of ways, some of the most fair reporting on this story that I've seen in a long time. I'm constantly talking about the biased news stories and how those news stories affect potential jury pools. So it's only fair that when we come across one that's a little more neutral, we talk about it. And in a lot of ways, these are some of the big issues a lot of us have been talking about for some time. So what are those issues, what are those concerns, and what are those problems? Bryan Kohberger, the suspect accused of attacking 4 young University of Idaho students in 2022, is set to go to trial in August in a case that could see him get the DP. He is charged with the passing of Madison Mogan, Kayla Goncalves, xana Kernoodle, and Ethan Chapin, who were together in the same house when someone broke in at night and attacked them. But the case is running into problems, not least a failure by prosecutors to ascribe a motive for the attacks, which terrified a region and shocked the U.S. amid a media frenzy around the crime. And I've consistently said, where is the motive? What is the reason? Now I understand me trying to make sense of a potential motive in this particular situation is me trying to make sense of a senseless crime. And I also understand a motive isn't necessarily required in these situations. But when you're talking about a first-degree charge with a DP sentence, a lot of jurors may have a problem with coming to that conclusion if they don't know the reason why. Understanding the reason why is a key piece of this crime that hasn't been laid out for anybody as of now. Now, if there is a motive, they're keeping it sealed, or if they're going to guess towards a motive, they're doing a good job of keeping that sealed as well. But simply getting up there and trying to make the case that he did it because he was a potential SK or he wanted to be an SK is going to be a reach for a lot of jurors. Because unlike other SKs, Bryan doesn't have that history of violence that we know of. So the lack of a motive is a big issue, and there's other issues they're going to talk about in a second. But the bigger question right now is if the state cannot provide a motive or can't come to the conclusion of a potential motive, how does that affect this trial moving forward? How does that affect the jury coming to the conclusion Bryan committed this crime? That is a huge unanswered question. I am of the belief that a lot of potential jurors are going to have a problem just simply saying he did this and not knowing a reason why. Last week, Kohberger's attorneys requested a trial delay, citing in part intense publicity around the case generated in part by a recent NBC Dateline special they claim was prejudicial to their client because it contained apparent prosecution leaks in violation of a non-dissemination order. And on my video about the delay, I said the delay would be fair given what has happened right here. Now, some people have said my video on the delay was biased, and that's fine. This is just an open discussion channel, but that's what I feel like would be fair. A small delay, not a long one. Others have said maybe this is something they can use to get the DP pulled off the table, which is another fair point and a point that I didn't make in my video. And there were people talking about this leak came from the defense. It was a defense strategy to cause a delay. But as it was phrased by Judge Hippler and phrased by the defense, it is more likely than not that these leaks came from somewhere on the state side. Maybe not necessarily through the prosecution, but maybe through law enforcement. Or there is some potential here that these leaks came from the FBI. The reality is the leaks could have came from anywhere. Maybe they came from the defense. Maybe they came from one of the investigators on the defense. I'm just simply saying the phrasing within the court documents and how all that thing's sort of reading is indicating that more likely than not, this didn't come from the defense. It's not beneficial to the defense. It came from the state. The leaks included information that the phone belonging to Kohberger connected 23 times in 4 months to a cell phone tower near the rented home, where the 4 students were attacked. And also that he searched the internet for information about SK Ted Bundy as well as keywords used in association with the adult film industry. The defense is arguing it now requires more time to prepare for a trial because of the publicity around the information. And I'm fair on this channel. I'll continue to be fair on this channel. Now, do they require more time because of the leaks and this potential of leaks? My opinion was a delay would be fair because time between this story and seating the jury is something that would help ensure we get a fair trial. But I'll also be fair and say that the delay because of this publicity isn't something that makes sense to me. It's had publicity since day one. I don't believe it's valid to say you can get a delay because of the public nature of this particular crime. Now, I may be wrong in that guess. I've been wrong before, but this is just an open discussion channel and you can feel free to disagree down in the comments below. Further problems may arise in July with the pretrial publication of the Idaho 4 by the crime writer James Patterson and journalist Vicky Ward, who ran afoul of a judge in South Carolina after obtaining crime scene photos and documents in a civil claim related to the state's notorious Alec Murdaugh double passing case. And just something to remember to all those individuals who want to leak information to the press. Nothing happened to Patterson or Ward in that particular situation. But Becky Hill stepped into a big pile, and this entire leak along with her book have cost her everything that she worked for. So when you leak things to the press for some potential reward in the future, just understand you're going to have to give up something. And sometimes what you're giving up is going to be way more than what you're going to gain. Kohberger's attorneys have said that the blurb for the book suggests that the apparent Dateline leak was not the only violation of this court's non-dissemination order, and a delay might mitigate the prejudicial effects of such inflammatory pretrial publicity. Idaho Judge Hippler has said that he is open to appointing a special prosecutor to question people under oath to determine the origin of the leaks. But whether or not a delay is granted, a number of recent court rulings have been going against Kohberger, who has pled not guilty. His defense team has tried to keep considerable evidence, including the 911 call alerting police to the crime, the description of a man with bushy eyebrows at the house around the time of the attacks, and his Amazon shopping history, including the purchase of a knife similar to the one the alleged assailant had used, out of the trial. Amazon records show that an account under Kohberger's name and email address bought a K-bar knife, sheath, and sharpener in March of 2022, 8 months before the attack, and had them shipped to his parents' home in Pennsylvania, where he was later arrested. A brown leather K-bar sheath was found, police said, next to one of the victims, and the DNA on the clasp matched Kohberger. And when this information came out, I was one of the few, but not the only one, who said this is a bad fact for the defense. This is a circumstantial case, and everything's about a story. And this is a part of the story that looks bad for Bryan. I get that me saying that upset a whole lot of people, but it is what it is. I'm going to talk about this thing fairly. It's not the end of the world necessarily, but we also don't need to ignore it. We don't need to necessarily pretend like this is absolutely 100% nothing. Kohberger's defense team claims his Amazon purchase history was taken out of context, incomplete, and unfairly prejudicial. But Hippler ruled it was highly relevant and establishes significant connection between the defendant and the K-bar and knife sheath. And like it or not, that's true. In another ruling against the defense, Hippler turned down a request to exclude the criminology student's 12-page master's essay from being presented as evidence in trial. In it, Kohberger assessed how to handle a crime scene where a woman was found attacked. Other rulings going against the suspect involve evidence about his white Hyundai Elantra, a similar make and model of car that the prosecutors say the attacker drove and was captured on a security video near the home before the attacks and leaving soon after. And here's what I'll say about the surveillance video. I'm just going to have to personally throw it out unless there's more brought up at trial. I can't make out one thing or another of that white vehicle. I know some individuals are saying that vehicle's green, but for me, how I'm looking at this thing, it looks white to me. But once again, is it a Hyundai Elantra? I have no idea. And I don't believe anybody can honestly sit there and say, based off the leaks and the information that we have right now, that that is a Hyundai Elantra. It's a white vehicle, foreign made, or potentially some type of American sports model. But other than that, I have no idea. Nor has the judge allowed defense requests that the DP option be dropped because their client was once diagnosed with autism. Hippler instead ruled that the defense can only introduce the diagnosis if Kohberger testifies in his own defense or as a mitigating factor if he is convicted. Hippler also ruled that Kohberger's defense was permitted to keep court filings in support of alternate perpetrators. Still, from public view, it is not yet clear if the defense claims of another perpetrator or perpetrators claimed to be in the documents will be permitted at trial. And here's what I'll say about the alternate suspect. Do I believe the defense has the right to a valid third-party defense? Yes, I do. But there has to be something there other than hearsay and nonsense. Simply saying Tom, Dick, and Harry probably could have committed this crime just because Tom, Dick, and Harry happened to live next door isn't valid on its own. You need more. I'm not making the case the defense has to solve this crime. I'm just saying you need more than just one thing. That there are a couple parts of this story that could indicate somebody else committed this crime, so be it, let that come in. But let's just don't throw names against the wall. I don't believe that's fair either. Absent from the prosecutor's filings to date are any attempts to ascribe a motive for Kohberger's alleged actions. Forensic psychologist Carol Lieberman has said she believes Kohberger's decision to study psychology and then criminology was because he was trying to calm the demons inside of him and simultaneously trying to learn how to commit the perfect crime. To The Guardian last week, she went further, arguing that the messy crime scene and use of a knife was evidence that Kohberger harbored rage against young women. Kohberger, she claimed, had held this rage since at least middle school when he had a crush on a cheerleader, said to have looked like Kaylee Goncalves, only for her to reject him. I think that's why he stalked and attacked them, she said. Which there's several issues and several problems within this particular part of the article. Number one, it has been consistently said through all major news outlets and news articles that Maddie Mogan was the target, she was the intended target of the home. Now we don't know that to be sure, but that seems to be a consistent thing when talking about this story. So how on one hand can Maddie be the target, but Kaylee was the intended target of Bryan? That just doesn't make sense, at least it doesn't make sense to me, and if it makes sense to you, let me know down in the comments below. According to some reports, Kohberger followed Mogan and Goncalves on Instagram. The defense denies the claim and argues there's no motive to find because Kohberger did not commit the crime. And it's also fair to mention that they say according to some reports, meaning the Guardian is not willing to get on here and say that he followed these individuals on Instagram. It's in the court documents, there's no connection between Bryan and these four. And if there's no connection and there's no motive, how strong is the state's case? That's a concern. That's a huge concern for me, and it should be a huge concern for the prosecution. To say this is random, 100% completely random, he stalked the home, not the victims, is a big stretch in my own personal opinion. And it's one of the many issues if you're looking at this story fairly. Louis Schlesinger, a professor of psychology at John Jay College, said it should be noted that Kohberger's alleged crime was a targeted mass attack, not an SK, because there were two others in the home at the time, including a surviving roommate, who reported seeing an intruder with bushy eyebrows and was not attacked. This seems to be situationally based, so you can rule out psychosis or impulsivity. Schlesinger said, and it doesn't appear to be motivated by anything romantic. It could be jealousy or a feeling of rejection or humiliation, but we really don't know what the motive was. But that doesn't mean a jury would not want prosecutors to at least imply a motive. Jurors want to hear motive before they send someone to the passing chamber, he said. They will want to know why he did it. And that is the problem at the end of the day. What is the reason why? What is the motive? What is the connection? Yes, the sheath being left behind at the crime scene and Bryan's search history proving he bought a K-bar and a sheath is a problem because that appears to be his DNA on the sheath. We just don't know if it's direct or secondary transfer. But to say there doesn't appear to be a motive, they don't have to have a motive, and it's okay that there's no connection. Is you ignoring other bad facts? I mean, if I can get on here being fair and objective, saying this sheath and the purchase of the sheath is a problem for the defense, you should at least be able to say, yes, that is a problem for the defense, and it's equally a problem that they don't know what a motive is. And the lack of a connection is a problem. Now, I've been wrong before, and maybe I'm wrong in this take, and if I'm wrong in this take, you can let me know down in the comments below. But if you enjoy this and a more fair, open conversation, maybe check one of these videos out. Y'all be safe now.